I'm Wendy Bissler. I'm the president of the Coonamessett River Trust. The River Trust was formed in May of 2006 to promote and preserve the environment, natural heritage, and ecological integrity of the Coonamessett River and its surrounding lands. We engage in the scientific study of the river's water quality, fish, plants, birds, and other wildlife, and we also look at the educational and recreational activities focused around the Coonamessett River. For over 10 years, we have worked towards returning the Coonamessett back to a more natural river system. And thanks to our first speaker tonight, this hope is becoming a reality. Dr. Elizabeth Gladfelter, what we actually I'll call her Betsy, is a marine ecologist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, whose work has focused on coral reefs, but she is interested in natural biomes all over the world. She's a member of the Town of Falmouth Conservation Commission, and she was appointed by the CONCOM to coordinate the Coonamessett River Restoration Project. And I just want to say that Betsy has been absolutely fabulous and a key component of having this restoration plan move forward for the Coonamessett. And she's been really fabulous about bringing all the parties together around the town and around the state to focus their energy on moving forward on river restoration for the Coonamessett. And we all owe her an enormous thank you for all she does on the river's behalf. So thank you, Betsy.
Do you know where my clicker is? I am. It's on. Everybody can hear me? Yes. Okay, well, I would like to start by saying I wouldn't be here and we wouldn't be at this point if it weren't for the Coonamessett River Trust, which has had a clear vision of improving fish habitat and habitat for all species, and having the Coonamessett be a great area for recreation as well. And so there are two things I'm going to talk about today. One is where we are with the restoration project, and it's going to be a very brief presentation, and we're going to have another meeting in February where we'll go over a lot more detail as to what's going to happen. And the other thing I want to talk about is the Coonamessett Greenway Heritage Trail. Those of you also involved with the 300 Committee know that there's been a vision of having a greenway, a green buffer around the Coonamessett. And greenways are corridors of undeveloped land preserved for recreation use or, and I'll say and/or, environmental protection. And this greenway is going to serve both those purposes. So that all the green areas, and actually there's more land now since this map was done, but are protected conservation areas. And so another idea that the Coonamessett River Trust had years ago is, wouldn't it be fun to have a trail down there? And somebody mentioned it to me at one point, and I said, well, yeah, but what would really be cool is there's a fabulous land use history to be told in the Coonamessett Valley. So I had interns last summer, and we just mapped out most of this trail already exists. There are a few pieces that we're going to have to fill in. But my idea was having way stations along the way, and there are already some way stations. Coonamessett River Trust has an informational booth. The 300 Committee has an informational booth. The Coonamessett Pond Association has a kiosk with historical and/or natural history information. So the idea would be this trail would be more or less, depending on the route you take, 3.5 miles long. There'd be 10 way stations and a Coonamessett Gateway Park at the side of the lower dam. And the idea there would be to use the lower dam in the 1700s was a woolen mill. And many of the granite blocks that were part of that mill are part of the dam. And when the dam gets taken down, we're going to keep all those granite blocks and make an amphitheater there for the research that Coonamessett River Trust does for school groups, and so forth. And so the philosophy would be, how does land use change in time? What people were involved? This area had grist mills, woolen mills, various kinds of agriculture. One of the biggest dairy farms in Cape Cod was by the Coonamessett Pond. A lot of sheep were here through the years. It had an active fishing, a herring run. And now what we want to do is, as anywhere in the world, time passes, economies change, and what we're really missing are beautiful cold water streams where herring and trout can be. So thus far, the partners on the Heritage Trail include the Coonamessett River Trust, the 300 Committee, and the Association to Preserve Cape Cod. But we'll have some additional partners as I meet with them. And I want to tell all of you, if you want to get involved, if there's anything that I say today that you think is interesting that you'd like to add, or you have an idea, feel free to contact me, because I'm always willing to listen to ideas. It's amazing how many, the idea that you might give me, we might not implement just as you give it to me, but it'll spark another idea, a chain of events. Okay, here we have Coonamessett Pond. Here's the Coonamessett River. And our restoration area is, for this quote phase, is the lower Coonamessett River Restoration Project area. One other thing I want to tell you that I learned the other day from the Book of Falmouth. Coonamessett River used to be called the 5-Mile River because it's 5 miles from Coonamessett Pond to Vineyard Sound. And when Falmouth was first founded, the Coonamessett River was the eastern boundary. Okay, so what are we going to do for restoration? Restoration is going to be in 2 phases. The first phase will be next summer, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute. But Lower Bog Dam will be removed, and the river will be made more sinuous through this area, and then the areas to each side will be restored as a riparian buffer. Phase 2, also during this year, we'll be doing the engineering work and engineering plans for Middle Bog and Reservoir Bog for replacing the culvert underneath John Parker Road and for removing Middle Dam. Permitting will be 2018. Permitting takes, I'm on a permitting body. That's where I have to go right after this meeting. But it's amazing when you get in a project like this. Permitting takes about a year for this kind of project. And then the construction, which will be very similar in philosophy to this construction, will be in 2019, and things will be completed by 2020. And I always tell students it takes about 10 years, so we have to finish by 2020, so we can go on to another project. Okay, so phase 1 is, now we're looking east. Phase 1 is Lower Bog. Here's Lower Bog Dam. Okay, and sort of the philosophy, we're working a lot with Division of Ecological Restoration, and I just came from another site earlier today. What you ask, the question you ask is, you want to improve your fish populations. Well, what's stressing the fish population? And in this case, in the Coonamessett, these bogs have been under cranberry cultivation for a little over 100 years. The rivers become straight, sluggish, wide, sandy bottom, and the buffer lacks shade. It's poor habitat for reproduction of blueback herring reproduce in the river, trout, poor habitat for successful migration of any of these fishes, because any of you who have been out there during migration, you see that there's a feeding frenzy among the birds, and also some of the fishes. But obviously the birds can look down and see the fish against that sandy bottom. And the other problem is temperature. And temperature's a little bit more, we have a little bit more of a challenge with temperature, but what we will do in this next 4 years of restoration is we'll have a buffer, we'll have side streams to capture some of the cold water. So the river, for those of you who don't know the hydrology of the area, it's not like all this river's coming out, all river water's coming out of Coonamessett Pond. Much of the flow comes in through groundwater seeps. And so if you tap into those, you can have side streams. So even though the main river gets warm at the end of the summer, the trout can be there, but then get into a cooler spot. So what are we going to do? So the restoration actions are going to be removing accumulated sand. In order to grow cranberries, cranberry bogs are, sand is added every year or every couple of years. And in this case, these bogs have 1 to 3.5 feet of sand on them. And it's amazing when you cut right down in that sand, you can see all the layers that have been put on. We're going to add LWD. This was a new term for me. I've gotten a lot of river restoration names. LWD is large woody debris. And we're going to make the river more sinuous. That'll cause the river to flow more rapidly. It'll have curves, and we'll have overhangs for shelters. I'll show you this in just a minute. Add some buffer plantings, although much of the plantings will spring up from the seed beds that are in the peat. And I heard today some seed company, I'll say Burpee, but I don't know. Some seed company did a study, and they took peat, and they prepared it so that things could grow up, and then they sort of let it be dormant again, and they let it do it again, and basically they mimicked 100 years of seed growth, and they stopped after that point. So there's lots of native seed available. And lastly, we'll tie into cold water springs. So, this probably has a pointer, but this is how the river flows now. And the river will be restored to have many more loops. And what happens in an area like this, any of these bends, is here's your large woody debris. Your large woody debris is put on the outer part of bends, and when the water flows, think if you were a drop of water. This is a longer route than this, and so it goes faster than this area. So this area gets scoured out, and sediment is deposited on this side. And so you have little pools that are underneath these logs. Okay, I just want to warn everybody, this is really important. Get this word out in Falmouth. It's not going to look pretty when the work's being done. This is Tidmarsh, where I was today. This is some of the work through the year. They started the project a year ago. I was out there today. This area, this is the last part. This is their last week. This was done last week, and they added a lot of large woody debris here. But you see how it's pretty barren? This was done 8 weeks ago, and they didn't plant anything. That's all seed that's come up from the peat. And here's a pile of large woody debris. And the reason I put this in, I just took this today too, is that we are going to be collecting large woody debris. We have some that we're getting from the town, and I'm going to talk to some of the people who generally clear land when there's development. And some of them had promised me a few years ago, before we had money, you know, I'd say, hey, you know, we really need this. And they said, well, when do you need it? And I said, well, not now, not now. Well, now we're at the point we do need it, so I'll revisit these people. But this is probably about half of, that's kind of one log wide, but about half of what we're going to need for the lower bog. And then 2 years later, we're going to need it for the next 2 bogs. Well, they need slash, too. I'll ask. That's a good idea. I mean, this is a good time of year. Oh, OK. The question was, how about Christmas tree collections? And they do need some slash also. Once the sand is taken out, wood is placed on the surface. So I'll ask about that. That's a great idea. See, that's the kind of thing. I'm done. OK, these are from different projects, but just to get an idea, this is a picture I took in 2015. These are all pictures from Division of Ecological Restoration. This is what it's going to look like. There's going to be big equipment on the bog platform, big logs. This is Eel River 3 years post-restoration. And you see, you know, there's a lot of vegetation already growing. And then here's Red Brook, 15 to 20 years after restoration. OK, timeline for restoration. Anybody who was here last year for Andy's talk last year, I sort of talked about restoration, and I said, yeah, this is what we're hoping to do, but we really don't have any money. Well, we actually hit the jackpot this year. And so I'm going to sort of skip through. I just want to mention the baseline information Coonamessett River Trust started collecting. And I will mention Fish America Foundation. NOAA was our initial seed grant. Let's see, do a conceptual idea of how you could improve fish passage is up to Pond 14. But the Division of Ecological Restoration, the Mass Environmental Trust, and NOAA restoration funding, and National Fish and Wildlife funding, we've received all of that. And these grants, Mass Division of Ecological Restoration is putting $30,000 to $40,000 a year into our project. Started in 2012, we'll continue to support it until it's completed. Mass Environmental Trust, we've had 2 grants from them. We're not applying for one this year, but APCC is applying for one to help us with our heritage trail. And I have to tell you, because they always ask about this, Massachusetts Environmental Trust is supported by whale tail and trout license plate and a mill license plates. So NOAA restoration funds, we put in for a grant this year for $500,000 to do the work in Lower Bog and to do the engineering plans for the next 2. They called us up in June, I guess, May or June, and said, well, we really like your project. Tell us how much it'll take to get it all done. So this year, they're giving us $430,000, and total for 3 years will be over $1 million. So 2016, 2017, phase 1, removal of lower dam, restoration of lower bog will be complete. Phase 2, 75% plans of restoration of middle and reservoir bog, removal of middle dam, replacement of the John Parker culvert. 2018 will be 2018 to 2020, permitting for phase 2 and all the restoration work. It's really important for you to understand that all of these grants require a match. And the Coonamessett River Trust volunteer time, my volunteer time, the Botany Club, The 300 committee all have given significant volunteer time, and the town of Falmouth has supplied in-kind services. They'll be taking down the dam. They'll be working with the river restoration engineer on putting out bids for this project and so forth. This work couldn't be done without everybody contributing. And so I think it's kind of fun to have something that everybody can feel that they've played a big part in. Okay, important dates. November, which is a couple of days, right? From now, we've already met a couple of times with the town of Falmouth, people who will be participating in this. We're going to meet with Coonamessett River Trust on, I think we have a date for the 17th, but we'll have a second meeting out in the field because Nick Nelson from Interfluve will be down here doing work along with our town engineer, and we'll set on a date. I'll work with Wendy, and we'll set on a date that will work for people when Nick's going to be down here for field work. Okay, in February, we're going to have a public meeting. I hope we're going to have it here. You must know how to set this up, so I'll ask you to help. By that time, we'll have conceptual plans for phase 2 and a more detailed schedule. Phase 1 will begin, we have time of year restrictions because of the fish runs. And so phase 1 construction will begin maybe the 1st of July, maybe the 15th of July, and is expected to last 6 weeks to 2 months. July and September, the lower dam will be removed and we'll have phase 1 construction. Okay, these goals, remember when you were, where's the school teacher? There you are. Do you still give gold stars? So these are gold stars. The gold stars are for the people who are currently supporting the project, and the only one who didn't get a gold star, but they helped initiate the project, was Fish America. So our grants are from NOAA, NIFWIF, Massachusetts Environmental Trust. We have a generous contribution plus an invaluable contribution of technical experience from Division of Ecological Restoration. Beth Lambert is our contact. Mass Fish and Wildlife, Mass Division of Marine Fisheries, Town of Falmouth, Coonamessett River Trust, Botanical Club, and the 300 Committee. And next year, if we're all here and I give this talk, there'll be some more symbols up there. And that's it. Thank you.
So thanks, that was great. I'm very excited about the future of this project. I think I hear my echo, yeah. So I imagine that the grants included like before and after measurements, that the restoration is actually having some effect on
right, and those are
measurements
data
that you may have taken.
Right, so there are 2 sets of data. One is there's a lot of data that the Coonamessett River Trust has collected, including a lot that you're going to hear today about fish populations and so forth. But there are also surveys. The town of Falmouth will be working with the river restoration ecologist on surveys of the riverbed, cross sections across these platforms. Yeah.
So,
yep.
So I was involved in the herring count, and the thing that I didn't see and was trying to think of, so you can take away the counting site that we used.
Well, not
beforehand.
exactly. There's going to be a bridge. There are going to be bridges across lower dam and middle dam.
That's exactly what I'm asking about. Is so if you're going to do any post restoration counting, it has to be at some reasonable facsimile site.
It will be. It'll be the exactly.
That's really all I want.
Good.
We're planning on putting a pedestrian walkway to replace where people walk now on the berm.
I will say, Nick Nelson, for those of you who haven't met Nick, is like that tall, and he says, oh, well, you know, you can cross the river we can just put some of those granite blocks and you can rock hop. And I said, you know, Nick, I said, you're a lot taller than I am. And I said, and you're 35 years younger than I am. So today on the field trip, we get to the river, and I'm like, you know, there's these big blocks across the river. And Alex says, oh, come on, this is easy. Well, we made it. I made sure my cell phone was in a plastic bag. Well, they didn't have any. The river was flowing through it.
Hi, Betsy, Doug Brown. So I grew up on Shorewood Drive and used to go up the Coonamessett River. And when I was a kid, we had a hard time getting up the river because the neighbors didn't like us trespassing through their properties, and they would fell trees across the river. We would have to portage the boat around. Are you finding that the neighbors are receptive to the idea of the trail?
Well, the trail's already there. People already walk the trail.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because they're the bog roads, and they're on some of the berms.
Right, but further up,
No,
is
it's
your
all-
intention to get all the way to the Coonamessett Pond?
Yeah, and you can go all
It's
the way.
already there?
It's the trail. That part is fine. There's some problems where there's one piece that's missing. I'm hoping the 300 committee fills it in, where you have to walk along Sam Turner Road right now.
Well, that's great to hear, thanks.
Yeah, most of the rest, and so you know, we'll identify these areas and try to pick them off as time comes. Yeah, and actually, speaking of ideas, I was out there 2 days ago on a field trip, and I was describing sort of a vision. We don't know exactly how the John Parker Road crossing is going to change, but we're thinking of an arch, and the young guy with me has just come from school in Colorado, and he said, well, have you thought of putting incorporating the trail into the design so people don't have to cross John Parker Road? And I said, wow. And I just happened to have a meeting with Ray Jack on Monday, so I'm
Oh, that's awesome.
gonna throw this into the mix.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Betsy.
Yeah, thank you.
You have to leave.